Yesterday, I gave a brief summary on crime and punishment and the prominent theme of guilt Raskolnikov faces for the murder of the pawnbroker and the redemption he uses to serve time in the Siberian labor camp. And in this video today, we're going to be discussing the themes of alienation and pride. Let's start off by discussing Raskolnikov's lifestyle and the poverty around him. Okay, so many times in the novel, his physical living conditions are described as cramped and small. His clothing is ripped, and in one instance in the novel, he is mocked by someone that he walks past because of his hygiene and the hole in his hat. Raskolnikov avoids interacting with people because he is poor and agitated. He avoids encountering his landlady because he's afraid that she's going to ask for the rent that he hasn't paid for, and he avoids having friends because he is alienated in himself. All around Raskolnikov and in St. Petersburg, there is extreme poverty. The novel describes the people of St. Petersburg as intoxicated, unable to sustain themselves and their family, and women giving themselves up for prostitution. So Raskolnikov is experiencing a lot of poverty and dread around him. He doesn't have much in common with the normal people of St. Petersburg, and he decides to isolate himself. You have to understand that Raskolnikov is a former university student and he's intelligent, whereas the people of St. Petersburg are illiterate, many of them are, and for that reason he doesn't seem to have much commonality between himself and the common people. And for this reason, Raskolnikov's alienation grows. He's unable to interact or mingle with the people around him. His poverty forces him to not be able to interact with friends or attend a university where he's able to meet new people. And this causes Raskolnikov to isolate himself alone in his room, where he starts developing very extreme ideas. This imposes him to develop rationalistic ideologies and fuel radical thinking. And because he's not interacting with anyone, no one is challenging his ideas. During one of the chapters, he has a conversation with a police investigator that suspects that Raskolnikov in some capacity was involved in the murder, and the investigator mentions an article that Raskolnikov wrote in a university column on ordinary versus extraordinary men. And during this interaction, we see Raskolnikov extremely prideful in himself, and he considers himself to be one of those extraordinary men. And so you may be wondering, what is an extraordinary man? Raskolnikov in his article describes this person as someone that transcends law, and that regular moral law that is applied to the ordinary person doesn't apply to these people because the action that they're committing is for the greater good of humanity, almost like a Napoleon-like figure. And Raskolnikov uses this justification to murder the pawnbroker, saying that for the greater good of humanity, by murdering this pawnbroker, I am freeing the world of the people that she has cheated and the abuse that she was giving to her sister. We can see here that he's extremely prideful of himself, and he regards himself as one of the extraordinary people. However, Raskolnikov's pride isn't displayed only in this interaction with the police investigator. He is also extremely prideful of himself, and he typically disregards his friendships and even his mother and sister. He refuses on numerous instances to accept help and believes that he is capable of dictating his own life and journey. We don't only see pride within Raskolnikov, we also see it within the educated Russian elites of the novel, from characters such as Lucian, who is a wealthy government official who is planning to marry Raskolnikov's sister Dunya, and Shidrigayov, who is a wealthy man from Raskolnikov's hometown. We see pride and a sense of them being better than everyone else because they're one of the few educated Russian elites, whereas other people in St. Petersburg are not as educated as them. We discussed the themes of alienation and pride, and though they seem different from each other, they're very much related. When one alienates themselves from society and lives within their own mental bubble, they're unable to diversify their ideas or have others challenge their ideas. Alienation leads to pride, as one thinks that everyone else's views are beneath them. One justifies that they are different from society and continue to fuel the feeling of separating themselves from the rest of society. Ultimately, we see that alienation and pride become the downfall of Raskolnikov. Slowly his pride is shattered by guilt, and it's only love and compassion that he receives from Sonia which eventually force him to abolish his pride and confess to the murder.